Hello, what's up? Welcome to The Rational Live. I'm your host, David Dole. I just realized I didn't check to see if everything works properly. Okay, it's fine. Sometimes my streaming program here screws up. But anyways, hello. How's it going? It is June 11th, 2021. I am your host, David Dole. I was not here last week, so I'm here this week. And a lot of great stuff today. In fact, I spent all morning prepping the show. 3 rather large stories, and then I'll get to the tweets of the week as well, which is going to be also longer than usual. But before I preview any of that, of course, if you want to help support the show, therationalnational.com/join. That's the Patreon page. Links are also below the video in the description box. Patreon, PayPal, Streamlabs, join on YouTube. A variety of ways to help me. Of course, as well, super chats throughout the stream. I'll take those as well. But now, let me give you a quick rundown of today's show before I get to it. So shortly, I'll be getting to how Democrats are now rejecting Biden's constant capitulation to Republicans. Also, I'm going to get to a couple of ladies that embarrassed themselves discussing a vaccine conspiracy theory. Just incredible video. Also, big news in Canada. A Green Party MP left the party and joined the Liberals. As a former Green candidate, I'm going to give my thoughts on this as well as break down that story and what exactly happened there. Also, of course, tweets of the week, where we have so much to go over. I'm all over the place with that. So you're going to see several clips and some other news stories as well that I didn't get to in the normal show. I'll just throw them in tweets of the week. All right. Should I get started? I feel it's really weird taking a week off. I don't feel like I'm myself today, if that makes any sense. But let me jump into it. Also, I wanted to show off my mug. Best mom ever. That's me. Obviously not my mug, but sometimes it's all you got there. So got my second coffee today. I don't normally have 2 coffees in one day, but today is a little different. Having a child is a lot of work. And sometimes there are late nights and you get up in the middle of the night and you're up for a while, and yeah. So I got coffee to save me, luckily. All right. Also, I just realized, what happened to my chat thing? Okay, I got it. This program sometimes just deletes stuff that I didn't even know it deleted. So I'll have to fix that at some point. All right, let me get to this story. Several Democratic lawmakers now have come out publicly saying they will not vote for President Biden's infrastructure plan if it doesn't center the climate crisis. This, of course, is over the fact that Biden keeps capitulating to Republican positions, starting with this piece of news that came out. Igor Bobik here tweeting out, asked about gripes from Democratic senators about climate. Romney says the Democrats' climate agenda is probably something they pursue by and large outside of an infrastructure bill. So Mitt Romney has been part of the negotiations with the White House over this infrastructure plan. And apparently, Mitt Romney's under the impression that climate's not going to be part of this infrastructure plan. And if that's the case, I mean, up to now, I think Biden has assumed that he's going to have all Democrats on board regardless of what the plan is. But luckily, that's not the case, as there are high-profile lawmakers, not even just progressive lawmakers, but in general, lawmakers that you may not even be all that familiar with, calling this out and saying they will not vote for this infrastructure plan unless it centers the climate. So first up here, Martin Heinrich tweeting out, an infrastructure package that goes light on climate and clean energy should not count on every Democratic vote. And that is the U.S. Senator from New Mexico. So he put that out, and a couple of replies to this. Michael Bennet, who ran for president and was a horrible candidate, but he sides with this comment here saying, Colorado and New Mexico share a watershed. I agree wholeheartedly with my friend. So, of course, as well, AOC, one of the co-sponsors of the Green New Deal, agreed as well, saying, yep, don't count on every Democratic vote. And lastly here, I'm sure there are more, but another high profile, of course, the other co-sponsor of the Green New Deal, Ed Markey, was on MSNBC and shared his thoughts on this as well.
That the news they have a deal and the White House coming out basically with a wait and see message. What's your understanding of where things stand?
Well, it sounds like to me that they have a package which is climate denial masquerading as bipartisanship. We can't have an infrastructure bill in 2021 that doesn't have climate at its center. And any other bill that we are going to consider that does not have aggressive solutions to the climate crisis will just have that response, which I've been giving, which is no climate, no deal. That's the only way in which we can respond. This bill has to meet the magnitude of the challenges which the climate crisis is presenting to our country and to the planet.
So there you go. Now, of course, these are simply public statements. Is it all just posturing? Are they pretending that they're going to reject this as a way to try and push Biden in the right direction? I guess we're going to have to wait and see. But ultimately, this is how it starts. So the hope here is that these public statements actually turn into real action, that if this infrastructure plan, this package does not center the climate crisis in a way that satisfies these lawmakers, that they will vote against it. That is the only way that Democrats will actually be able to get anything done for Americans, is if they stand up and vote against Biden's supported bills that he thinks are going to get all these votes, but ultimately, if it doesn't meet the demands or the requirements of what is necessary in this time, the idea of not centering the climate crisis in an infrastructure bill, you can't separate climate from infrastructure. It's one and the same. So it has to be a part of this package. So it's good to see these Democratic lawmakers stand up, at least vocally stand up. But of course, they're going to have to use their power together and vote against any infrastructure package that does not center the climate crisis. All right. That was a little quick one. Yeah, my whole chat thing is gone. I don't know what happened to I leave for 1 week and everything is weird. That's really odd. All right. So the chat is no longer on screen as usual, but I will be right back. Actually, I think I heard a super chat. Let me grab that before I move on. Samantha Sider, a very loyal supporter, sent me a super chat and a little emoji there. Thank you so much, Samantha. I'll be right back with the next story. All right, I'm back. Time for this story. I'm not sure if we should laugh or cry. I'm going to laugh, but there are so many people taken in, brainwashed by a shitty algorithm that sends them insane information about the vaccine and makes them think that they have the inside knowledge on what's going on, and this is really sad. So let me get to this story. A couple of anti-vaccine specialists, quote unquote, completely embarrassed themselves while speaking with Ohio lawmakers. Now, this is both funny and sad, as you're going to see. So first here, Tyler Buchanan, who covered politics for the Ohio Capitol Journal, tweeted out semi-prominent anti-vaccine doctor Sherry Tenpenny now testifying in favor of a bill to prohibit any Ohio business/school from mandating vaccines. Tenpenny breathlessly dismisses concern over COVID-19 as living in fear, while insisting alleged deaths from vaccines are a major issue. He goes on here saying Tenpenny began by saying she's spent up to 10,000 hours researching vaccines since the pandemic began. This is funny. There's only been around 11,000 total hours since the Ohio state of emergency was declared. So that'd be 22 hours per day, just to give you a sense of her accuracy chops. So here is the first clip. Here is Tenpenny discussing her ideas around the vaccine.
And some of the
live audience, apologies, going to make this go full screen for you. Just here we go.
information that I think had been discussed on your podcast related to EMF frequencies.
That was a thought.
And
it was because right now we're all kind of hypothesizing. I mean, what is it that's actually being transmitted that's causing all of these things? Is it a combination of the protein, which now we're finding has a metal attached to it? I'm sure you've seen the pictures all over the internet of people who've had these shots and now they're magnetized. They can put a key on their forehead, it sticks. They can put spoons and forks all over them and they can stick. Because now we think that there's a metal piece to that. There's been people who've long suspected that there was some sort of an interface, yet to be defined, an interface between what's being injected in these shots and all of the 5G towers. Not proven yet, but we're trying to figure out what is it that's being transmitted to these unvaccinated people.
And some of the...
All right. I don't even know where to begin. Magnetism. People are becoming magnetized. Millions of people now have the vaccine. Are they all sticking together? Like if you and your, I don't know, you and your mate both got vaccinated, when you go and meet up with them, do your hands attach and then you can't remove them because you're both magnetized together? I don't know where this shit comes from, but clearly the way this lady described it's very important. She says the images are all over the internet. I haven't seen these images, but she thinks that everyone else is seeing the same Facebook newsfeed that she is seeing, because the algorithm puts her down this path where it recognizes she is liking all of this bullshit coming out, so then it continues feeding her more bullshit. So then she thinks the newsfeed she sees online is the same shit everyone else is seeing, when it's not. It's designed for you and your insanity. This is, unfortunately, this algorithm, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, maybe Twitter in some ways, unfortunately, this leads people down a path of only seeing stuff that they agree with and never being challenged on anything that they're conspiring about. So obviously, this is completely ridiculous. And she also mentions 5G. I mean, this has been a running joke about people getting vaccinated. And she's actually discussing this as if it's a potential, a real thing. So another clip here. This lady. So Tyler Buchanan again tweets out saying, wow, an anti-vaccine nurse in Ohio tried to prove that vaccines cause magnetism theory in a state legislative committee. The demonstration did not go to plan. So I'm going to play this one, and this is equally ridiculous.
Yes, vaccines do harm people. By the way, so I just found out something when I was on lunch, and I wanted to show it to you. We were talking about Dr. Tenpenny's testimony about magnetic vaccine crystals. So this is what I found out. So I have a key and a bobby pin here. Explain to me why the key sticks to me. It sticks to my neck, too. I got this. Yeah, so if somebody can explain this, that would be great. Any questions? Yes, vaccines do.
Yeah, I got some questions. I have the same question. Why? Oh my God. I'm magnetized. That's it. She's right. No one in the world has ever been able to stick anything metal to their skin before these vaccines. Now, we're all magnetized. Wow. Oh, I can't even pull it off. It's stuck. Fucking ridiculous. These people are so crazy. It's hard to know, whether to laugh. Like this was hilarious. Danny Durrani here tweets out, I never realized how being fully vaccinated would help change my life. I am now the life of the party. I mean, if you think about it, it would be very useful. You'd never lose your keys. You'd always know where the change is. It would actually be a great feature of the vaccine. But, do we laugh at these people, or do we feel sad that they're this brainwashed? It's really hard to know. I guess it's a combination of the two. But, it isn't just two people that think this. There are millions that think the same way these people do. Again, part of the reason, of course, because of the shit they read online and what's being fed to them through these algorithms. So this is going to be a constant issue. Obviously, we saw a lot of this, not this specifically, but in general, this kind of bullshit during Donald Trump. And by the way, even before that, of course, there's been, fake news going out for years in various ways. But it's gotten to the point now where people are not getting a life-saving vaccine because they think you might get magnetized. I really don't know how to deal with people like this. I may be lucky in a way that I've never encountered anything like this in my personal life. I don't know anyone like this. I don't have any family members that are this crazy. So it's hard for me to know how to talk to someone like this, how to get through to someone like this when they are really in their own world. Luckily, the majority of people do believe the vaccines work, have gotten vaccinated or are getting vaccinated. So we at least have the numbers on our side. But the idea or the fact that there's even 20 to 30% of people that even think like this is, yes, in a way funny, but also really scary. All right. Complete insanity. That's going to be on my thumbnail, actually. Complete insanity. All right, one more. Let me grab Super Chats, and I'll get to my Green Party story and then the tweets of the week. I heard a Super Chat come in. Lawn Gnomes, always a fantastic supporter. Lawn Gnomes here saying you'd think that she'd realize she was magnetic before lunch that day, and yet she brought props. I'm sad to live in the same state as these clowns. A-Right says, I'm assuming she's not vaccinated, right? Then how can the magnets work? I think maybe part of their conspiracy theory is that other people getting vaccinated is making them, it's somehow shedding something that's making everyone who's not vaccinated magnetized. So if anything, I guess maybe I proved her theory wrong, as I am at least partially vaccinated, and this stuck to me. So if this is about unvaccinated people getting magnetized, then I just proved her wrong. So stupid. Radzoso, also a fantastic supporter, says, you know what harms people? Viruses. Smallpox, for example, has killed hundreds of millions for thousands of years, but it hasn't killed anyone since 1978. Thanks to vaccines, it has been eradicated. Yes, great point. Thank you for injecting facts into the conversation. Very, very rare to hear actual knowledge being shared by any of these people. All right. I'll be right back as I prep the next story.
I know
All right, back with my favorite story, but not because I love it necessarily, but because I find it rather interesting. So let me jump into this. One of only 3 Green Party members of Parliament have left to join Trudeau's Liberal Party. This deals a serious blow to the Greens and raises questions over the leadership of Annamie Paul, who just became the new Green Party leader last year. So first, let me show you who just defected to the Liberals. Jenica Atwin, so a Green Party MP, crossed the floor to join the Liberals. Now, there's, as a former Green candidate, I have a lot to say about this because on one hand, as we're going to get to, I understand her frustrations. At the same time, the Liberal Party seems like a bit of an odd choice. So let me, before I get to anything else, let me first play this quick rundown from CBC News on what just happened.
I know that my Liberal...
Once political rivals, now fellow Liberals, as a bright green light turns red.
The color of my team does not compromise who I am or what I will continue to do for this riding.
The Green hope was that Jenica Atwin's breakthrough in Fredericton would be the start of something bigger in Atlantic Canada, building on provincial success in New Brunswick and PEI. She joined Elizabeth May and Paul Manley to give the Greens a caucus of 3. That's now down to 2.
Again, I never expected this day to come.
It came in part because of internal Green Party disagreement over Israel. When party leader Annamie Paul called for a de-escalation of violence between Israel and Hamas, Atwin tweeted the statement was inadequate and wrote, "I stand with Palestine." One of Paul's advisors, Noah Zatzman, responded on Facebook, accusing Atwin of appalling anti-Semitism, vowing, "We will work to defeat you."
It's been really difficult to focus on the important work that needs to be done on behalf of my constituents, so it certainly has played a role.
I have never had anything but incredibly positive things to say about her. I was looking forward to campaigning for her in the next election.
Paul says she was surprised by the move, doesn't agree with it, but claims Atwin's conversations with the Liberals predate the controversy over Israel.
None of those reasons touched upon me, and her decision predated, not her decision, but her approach to the Liberals well predated the events that you mentioned.
But Paul's own MPs seem to corroborate Atwin's version of events. Paul Manley and Elizabeth May issued a statement saying they are heartbroken at the loss of their dear colleague and blaming their own leader's advisor for causing this crisis. David Cochran, CBC News, Ottawa.
All right, so that gives you a quick rundown of the facts. Now, a lot to say here. First, actually, well, I'll save the Liberal Party stuff for later. But first, the Green Party leader's role in all this, Annamie Paul. She just lost 1/3 of her caucus. I mean, 1 of 3 seats that they have. And she doesn't even have a seat of her own. And we're talking about somebody here who would not come to the defense of Jenica Atwin after her top advisor said that he would work to defeat her. So clearly here you have an issue where the leader of the Green Party has a completely different position on a high-profile issue like Israel-Palestine than her entire caucus does. And that has led to some obvious rifts in the party right now. And this is why, I mean, this isn't the only reason, but this is part of the reason why I fought for Dimitri Lascaris to become Green Party leader. And I'll get to a quote of his in a second on this as well. But he was such a clear voice here that would have made an obvious distinction of the Green Party versus other parties, that he was the obvious choice to lead the party. But they went with somebody who is a liberal in many ways, Annamie Paul is, except for, goes a little further on some issues like climate change and supporting other policies that the liberals don't. But really, at least when it comes to foreign policy especially, not much of a difference at all between Annamie Paul and the liberals, which also is weird when we get to Jenica Atwin moving to the liberals. But I'll get to that in a minute. First, I want to share A reaction here from Dimitri Lascaris, who, again, I supported in the leadership race. He came in second, came very close to becoming leader, ultimately lost to Annamie Paul. But he put his thoughts out today, saying in part, by refusing to defend Green MPs from false accusations against them by emanating from her own office, the Green Party leader has alienated members, failed to unite the party, and succeeded only in shrinking our caucus. While I do not believe that the Liberal Party is the way forward for progressive Canadians for the country, I wish Jenica Atwin all the best in the future. I very much hope that one day the conditions will exist for her to return to the Green Party while remaining true to her values and priorities. I very much don't think this is going to happen. I doubt she'll go back to the Greens at any point. But I think he makes the right point here. You had a leader who simply did not defend her own members when they were under attack. You know, advisors are a dime a dozen. Clearly, Annamie Paul has a terrible advisor. There's no reason to keep him on. Stand up for your own caucus here. And even if you have a different position on Israel, which Annamie Paul does, the language used by her top advisor clearly just inflamed this entire issue, just created this entire issue. And she needed to stand up for her own MP. Now, this takes me to the Liberals. Why? Why would you join the Liberals? So Jenica Atwin has fantastic position on Israel, has been incredibly critical of the far right-wing Israeli government and their war crimes against the Palestinians. Great. Liberals, though, are not critical of the right-wing Israeli government. So it seems rather odd for this to be one of the main reasons why she left the Green Party and then to join the Liberals, who do not agree with her on her position. So ultimately here, it's obvious what this is about. This is about Jenica Atwin keeping her seat. So if she's going to leave the Greens, the only other real option for her right now to keep her seat in the immediate future is the Liberals, as she defeated a Liberal in her last election. But Liberals right now are doing fairly well in polling. There's a possibility they may form a majority next time. So you have the potential here for, Jenica Atwin could have lost the next race if she had remained a Green in this seat. So she's joining the Liberals with the hope that she can maintain her positions on certain issues that differ from Liberals, but we're going to see how long that lasts. So I just want to share this from the Star. Atwin, 34, was a teacher and researcher prior to being elected and helped run an Indigenous education center. She has been a vocal critic of the Liberal government's failure to implement electoral reform and of its track record on addressing climate change. She has also opposed the government-approved expansion of the Trans Mountain Pipeline. So there's been a number of issues where Jenica Atwin has differed from the Liberals on major issues, apart from just Israel. So it's a weird choice, but she is claiming that she is not going to change her principles, that she will remain fighting for what she believes in. We're going to see, because typically, part of the reason I ran as a Green Party candidate years ago is because we were given the freedom at the time. We were given the freedom to differ on certain, differ on issues. We were allowed to be vocal where we differed with the leader on certain things. So because of that, I felt very free to actually, speak my mind on certain things that I thought the Greens weren't, far enough along on. And it's great to have that freedom. And Jenica Atwin had that freedom in a way, and still had that freedom as a Green MP. But when you have a, prominent advisor in the party criticizing you in the way that he did, clearly there is an attempt there to silence dissent within the Greens that didn't exist before Annamie Paul became the leader. Now, one last thing I want to share here. Saw this reaction from Christo Avalis, historian and YouTuber, who said Elizabeth May, the former Green leader, can say she's disappointed, but she worked overtime to use Paul to stop Lascaris. She may have killed the Green Party in the process. This is a great point. Elizabeth May and Paul Manley both came out and essentially, agreed with Atwin, saying that that top advisor was being divisive and helped lead to Atwin leaving. But where was Elizabeth May during the leadership race? She was actively working against Dimitri Lascaris. So I think it's obvious that was a mistake at the time. Clearly, it was still a mistake based on what's been going on. So this is, Christo's point here is, I think, well taken. They can be disappointed at what happened and at the at how the new leader, Annamie Paul, is treating the caucus. But at the end of the day, Elizabeth May helped to defeat Lascaris and put Annamie Paul in that position. And I do think it's clearly damaged the Greens by losing one MP. And there's no growth with the party that has a leader that ultimately does not work to understand and fight for what her caucus believes in. And even just, when an issue like Israel is so clear, you have a far right-wing government doing what they've been doing for decades, the oppression of Palestinians, the apartheid state of Israel, and not willing or not being able to call that out, call it for what it is. It shows a serious lack of, just evolution and growth and learning and changing. I can understand people having the wrong position on an issue like Israel for, years because they were taught a certain thing. But when you come into new knowledge, that should change your mind. And that's what the Green Party, for me, represented before. Like, hey, we have all this data, all this science around climate change. Why don't we actually do what the data tells us to do? That should also apply to every other issue as well. It shouldn't just apply to climate change. It should apply to everything. When you have the data, you have the knowledge in front of you that tells you the reality of what something is, the objective reality, then you should work to represent that objective reality and do what is necessary on that issue using the data in front of you. So by ignoring the reality of Israel, it really shows a serious flaw in the Green Party leader's ideology. And when she can't even win a seat for herself, I don't see much of an immediate future for the Green Party in Canada. All right. There you go. Next up is going to be tweets of the week. Before I get there, let me grab some more chats. Trying to find my place. Here we go. Gina McGrath, also a loyal supporter, says, David, do you think society, or at least the U.S., has declined in an irreversible way? Anti-vaxxers, anti-maskers, disinformation, Americans needing incentives to want to be vaccinated. Maybe I'm cynical, but it's hard to ignore. Do I think society has declined in an irreversible way? That's a good question that I don't know. I don't know the answer to. It, definitely in some ways, in many ways, social media has, I think, benefited a lot of people. We have grown and been able to take in new information and changed our opinions on certain things because of that. But at the same time, there has been, at least 20% of people who have been negatively impacted by social media and the internet and have gone down rabbit holes of disinformation that have led them to believe completely insane things. And I don't know how to get those people back. So in some ways, it has absolutely hurt us. In others, though, I still remain hopeful. I mean, you look at public polling on issues, whether it's universal health care, whether it's raising taxes on the wealthy and large corporations, whether it's raising wages. Generally, people lean progressive. Most don't know it. I mean, if you asked, this is an issue or a topic I bring up, several times a year, where if you look at polling on how people self-identify, at least in the U.S., whether they identify as conservative, liberal, or moderate, most people self-identify as conservative or moderate. But then you poll those same people on issues like single-payer health care, like the minimum wage, like raising tax on corporations, like ending the wars. They side with the progressive position. So a lot of people simply aren't aware of where they actually are on the political spectrum when it comes to, voting, but are actually progressives. So, but the other half of that issue as well is the cultural issues. So somebody may think, yeah, we should raise the wages and raise taxes on Amazon, but they care more about, white supremacy. So you can't really get through to those people. So there is, and that's a constant issue you have to deal with on the right, where you have this growing base that are attempting to attract people with their economic populism, but ultimately they are incredibly conservative to the point where they are white nationalists. So I'm not going to make any predictions about the future, I guess is what I'm trying to say. But I do remain hopeful. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this. If I thought there was no hope for the future and that we were all screwed, then what's the point of doing this? The whole point of me doing this, for me anyways, is to try and educate people and get new people in, which is also why I cover topics like The View, for example, that I'm not sure how many Meghan McCain clips actually appeal to my existing audience. But the whole point of videos like that is to try and get a new audience in that maybe watches The View, is misinformed by The View, and then maybe comes across a video of me talking about Meghan McCain and becomes educated on an issue where I turn a Meghan McCain clip into an education on single-payer healthcare or on Israel or on something else. So that's always my goal, is to educate more and more people, try to have a message that both appeals to those that already are on the left, but also is appealing enough to a new audience that helps to grow this audience and essentially, ultimately grow their knowledge in what is going on in the world and help to inform them in how to use their own power, be it through electoral politics or through activism. So I do have hope. Rhinowiki says, if the most experienced and popular leftist Bernie can get past corporate DCC control over the primary in 2 elections, what strategy and rep can? Okay, I see what you're saying. You're basically saying if Bernie can't get past the Democratic establishment, then what party? Then who can? Or what strategy can? It's not really about Bernie. It's about the ideas and them growing in popularity. So look, before Bernie hit the scene in really, I mean, he's been around forever, but until he became a household name, like in 2015, 2016, Medicare for All was not as popular as it is now. So he raised the popularity of a number of issues that I think helped to grow the interest in those issues. And ultimately what happened in 2020, when I think you can argue he did worse in 2020 than in 2016, the issue there was that people were so brought down by Donald Trump that they just wanted anything but Trump. And they were being told by the mainstream press that, hey, Joe Biden is the most electable. So people they wanted to get out Trump. They were told, even if they liked Bernie more and agreed with Bernie more, they wanted to get out Trump. And if Biden was their best bet and they were told that, then they went to vote for Biden over Bernie Sanders. So that was, part of the incredible damage, of course, that Donald Trump caused, is he lowered the expectations of what is possible. Back in 2016, coming off Barack Obama, there wasn't really that worry. So Bernie had a lot more support back then. This idea that, hey, we might actually get the real Obama this time, somebody who is not only just campaigning as a progressive, but actually wants to fight for these issues and has a track record of fighting for these issues. So that's why I think Bernie's popularity was higher in 2016, was because he was seen as somebody that could actually win, more so back then than maybe in 2020, where people just wanted to get out Donald Trump. But in terms of what strategy, for me, it's about time. I don't think it's not necessarily about a strategy, though, of course, I think, activist movements growing, unions growing in power, growing working class power in general, I think is a vital piece of it, because it's not just about electoral politics, but it's that in combination with the popularity of these ideas and people realizing with a Democrat in power right now that with Joe Biden, they're still calling him a socialist. They're still opposing 100% of his agenda. So, I mean, let's hope finally that anybody who is fooled by, the CNN, MSNBC line of, oh, Biden can work better with the right than Bernie Sanders can. Hopefully now they're waking up to that bullshit. That's just complete bullshit. Because Republicans are going to oppose whoever the Democratic president is. It doesn't matter who it is. Mitch McConnell came out and said they're going to oppose 100% of Joe Biden's agenda. So it's not the idea that Biden can work better with Republicans, and also think about that framing just on the face of it. Why do you want a Democratic president who can work better with Republicans? You should want somebody who's going to get through an agenda that the American people want. Republicans are just there to represent special interests, and of course, most Democrats are as well. But when you have a president, like say it was Bernie Sanders, who actually cared to pass an agenda to help people, then that changes the entire calculus and really works to benefit to increase the chances of something like universal health care or a larger infrastructure bill or whatever it is from getting through. But yeah, I don't know. I lost my place now. There you go. Bryce F says, "You're the only commentator I like since Michael Brooks." Thank you. You're too kind. I'm not afraid to say Michael Brooks is much better, or was much better than I am at this. So I appreciate that. But yeah, no one can ever replace what Michael did, especially when it comes to his focus on international politics. Tristan Scott, let me find her chat here. Tristan Scott says, "Is there a possibility that the Green Party is too decentralized and perhaps too much of a big tent? Atwin leaving raises some questions on structure." Well, members crossing the floor, it's happened several times. It's not just about the Greens. So I would say no. I don't think they're too decentralized. I just ultimately think the issue is that Annamie Paul has differing positions on major issues. And when you have, her top advisor calling out one of 3 Green Party MPs, it's a little ridiculous for Annamie Paul not to go out there and at least attempt to defend Jenica Atwin. So ultimately I think that's the issue, not necessarily about the Greens being decentralized, but more about just what actually happened. All right. Next up is tweets of the week. So I'm going to be right back and prep the fun. I'm back. lot of tweets this week. A lot of tweets this week. There are a few stories that I didn't have time, as usual, to prep, so I kind of just threw them into tweets of the week. So let's hope you find this interesting. It is time once again for tweets of the week. These are tweets and news stories and clips that I collect throughout the week that I want to share with people. So let's get started. First up, when I say tweets of the week, I don't mean they're all good ones. This is from the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. Legalize child labor. Children will learn more on a job site than in public school. This is a verified account. This is a real party. This is a real position. This reminds me of this clip from, I'm sure you're all familiar with this by now, but this is a clip from a Libertarian Party debate. I believe this is, I think this is 2016 because Gary Johnson's there. But check out this clip. It is, as Know Nothing says here, the same energy.
Should someone have to have a government-issued license to drive a car?
Hell no.
What's next? Requiring a license to make toast in your own damn toaster?
The license to drive? You know, I'd like to see some competency exhibited by people before they drive.
I that clip gets me every time. It is so ridiculous. So ridiculous. God, how can anyone be a libertarian? Anyway, that's amazing. Next one. Beth Miller here shared this, actually shared this tweet in another video, but I thought this was a great tweet that I want to share it again. Imagine if we lived in a world where the headline was this. So let me first show you what the headline on the story is. Showdown over Omar's comments exposes sharp divisions among Democrats. So I covered this story now essentially twice. On Monday, I covered her comments towards Secretary Blinken, discussing why Biden administration, or why don't they support the ability for victims in Palestine to go or to go to the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and have an investigation of what's going on by the Israeli government, and by the way, also Hamas. So anyways, I covered that a couple times. But of course, there was some outrage from Democrats that I covered yesterday about Ilhan Omar's comments that are so ridiculous. Her comments were fine. Nothing was wrong with them. But the way they frame this whole story here in the New York Times is, oh, this is a division among Democrats. They're having this fight. The headline could have been, member of Congress demands answers from State Department for victims of war crimes. Because that's ultimately what this story is about. But you have here a media that instead is driven towards this sort of, drama. And in one way, I understand it. Sometimes you need to elevate the drama in a headline to get the clicks. I've done that for sure. So I totally hear that. Because oftentimes, or not often, but sometimes there are certain stories that are kind of boring on their face. So you have to kind of, make them sexy so people will actually listen and be educated. But when it comes to the New York Times, I just feel there's a different level there where you should expect more of them, and being able to, because New York Times essentially sets, places like New York Times, Washington Post, CNN, MSNBC, they often set the narratives. So they have to take a leadership position here in actually correctly framing what these discussions are about. So instead of doing that, they go towards the drama. This is great. So Jordan, you will hear tweeting out, it's cool to see someone learn world history in real time. So if you don't know, Sagar and Crystal started their own podcast. They have left The Hills Rising. And for now, anyways, you have Ryan Grimm. And honestly, I forget this lady's name, but she is a conservative, Ashley something. She's from The Federalist. But watch this exchange. And it really is just, God, it shows you the complete difference between someone on the left who is educated and knows what they're talking about versus a conservative who is just a complete reactionary.
Or just you could throw a dart anywhere at the global map, and you can probably find, at some point throughout the 20th century, the U.S. intervening to undermine some type of social democratic effort and backing the most vicious right-wing elements. And the irony of them calling this anti-Semitism when the U.S. very consciously and explicitly out of World War II allied itself with former Nazis, helped Nazis escape justice, was complicit in what was called the rat line, with getting Nazis out of Germany and into these death squads that were run by the United States and deployed in an anti-communist fashion against the Soviet Union and against leftist elements in South America.
But who ended the Holocaust? I mean, what country?
The Soviet Union, actually.
Okay, but
I mean, the Soviet Union did that.
No,
we walked in after the Russians had suffered 20+ million casualties and marched into Germany.
Sure, but without the United States' intervention, a heck of a lot more people would have died in that atrocity.
Yes, and I'm glad the Soviet Union and the United States allied to beat Nazi Germany, but the Nazi Germany, the Nazis themselves then allied with the United States to go after the Soviet Union and to go after communist and social democratic elements in South America. That's an actual part of the history.
Right, but again, there's lives being saved in that process, a lot of lives being saved in that process, and a lot of Americans putting their lives on the line and dying to save those lives.
Sure, but many fewer than Soviet lives died to take on the Nazis.
I enjoy that. It's just, it shows you how little you have to know to become a conservative commentator. I mean, yeah, I don't know what really else to add to that. It's just, I hope these are the new hosts, but I heard some chatter online that apparently they're going to show who the new hosts are on the 14th. So I don't know. We'll find out. But this would be a great duo going forward, as I think the audience, especially a right-wing audience, would learn quite a bit from Ryan Grimm and his teachings here. All right. Next one. I just saw this story. Dimitri Lascaris shared this, saying 23-year-old Israeli refused to serve in Israel's military because it is a system that oppresses people, denies their rights, and maintains a regime that is racist, discriminatory, and belligerent. She then spent 110 days in military prison. So, I mean, this raises the point where if Israel won't even stand up for its own citizens, what's the chance of them standing up for Palestinians? So it really is, we're talking about a mindset that is in a government here that is rotten to the core, and they have to address their own issues here before there's any hope of them recognizing the humanity of Palestinians. Max Berger here tweeted out, "It's weird how Democrats aren't socialists but Republicans say they are, and many Republicans are fascists but Democrats won't say they are." This is just a microcosm of how weak the Democratic Party is and how aggressive Republicans are. The GOP will lie and lie and lie to fight and get what they want. Democrats won't even acknowledge that reality is on their side. But ultimately, again, this is about Democratic leadership, not necessarily about the entire party. Obviously, there are certain members of the party that are better than others and actually do call this stuff out. But leadership, Democratic leadership, has been garbage for decades at this point, and it's time for a change. Michael Buchert here. By the way, every time I see his name, I think I'm saying it right, but I feel like I've heard it differently. But Michael, if I got your name wrong, I'm sorry. But he tweeted out here, just this year, the word apartheid has been adopted to describe Israel by B'Tselem, Human Rights Watch, the post-apartheid governments of South Africa and Namibia, and 2 former Israeli ambassadors to South Africa. Canada rejects the word categorically. Whose opinion would you trust? So this is in response to this short clip. Let me just play this. The Liberal Party here categorically rejecting the idea that Israel is an apartheid state.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will simply say that the position of the Liberal government is extremely clear on the question of the apartheid label. We reject it categorically. It is not part of our approach with respect to the Israel or the Jewish community. And we, of course, are completely against any anti-Semitism that would be displayed by any Canadian citizen.
So ridiculous. The idea of criticisms of the Israeli government, that is somehow anti-Semitic, is so, as I've discussed a billion times, so stupid. And Canada clearly here is on the wrong side of history. It may not be obvious to the party right now, but it's going to be obvious to them in hopefully 10, 20, if we have to get there, years. But at some point, it will become obvious just how wrong people or parties like the Liberals and others who are unwilling to call out Israel's human rights abuses. It'll be so clear just how wrong they were. And actually, one more tweet on that. In fact, 45% of those living between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea believe apartheid is an appropriate term, including a quarter of Jewish Israelis. Which, by the way, worth mentioning here, B'Tselem is an Israeli human rights group, the largest Israeli human rights group, and they have called Israel an apartheid state. Iris here tweeting out, my work unionized and I got a $14,000 raise. Don't ever let them convince you don't need a union. There you go. And she shouts out her union. So there's a lot of anti-union activity out there. Of course, I covered Amazon's anti-union behaviors recently in the attempt to unionize a warehouse in the South in Alabama. But here you have it's important. I think if you're in a union and it's benefited you, tell your story, because there's been so much anti-union propaganda that's been put out over the years. I know, before I ever got into politics and began to learn and understand a lot of this stuff, I had a very negative opinion of unions as somebody who was in high school, because I was just told all the time how horrible they were. So it's important to put your voice out there, let your voice be heard, and discuss your experience and how being in a union has benefited you. Last thing here. This exchange between Chris Hayes and Bernie Sanders is pretty funny.
Are the Democrats going to make the decision at some point that they are going to pass this alone or not? And is that a possibility? And should we have faith that they can get there?
Well, faith, that's a big word for Washington, D.C. But,
that is not a reassuring answer, Senator.
It's like if you want a friend, get a dog, something like that. This is what I do think.
Yeah. That is depressing. Bernie here, usually Bernie is very, hopeful that things are going to work out in the end. But here he seems very down on the idea that Democrats will actually be able to get anything done. But we're going to see. And as I covered during this live stream, Democrats right now are becoming more vocal about rejecting Biden's continued capitulations to Republicans on the infrastructure bill. So you had Ed Markey, AOC, of course, but also people like Michael Bennett come out and say they're not going to vote for Biden's infrastructure plan if it does not center the climate crisis. So by having Democrats come together like that and vote as a bloc potentially against any sort of bill that is too right wing, then finally there may be some power taken back here and the ability to get something done in the future. But of course, it also relies on the filibuster or if they can use budget reconciliation. So, and then also you still need Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema's vote. So you can see why Bernie is not all that optimistic, because there is all signs right now point to Joe Biden getting nothing else passed, because the filibuster's still there. He's not really fighting either Manchin or Sinema, so they need 60 votes to get anything through. At the end of the day, unless Biden makes a serious change in his strategy and actually fights for the agenda he pretended to care about when he was campaigning, then ultimately nothing is going to get done. But there you go, your tweets of the week. All right. There we go. I got to figure out. Not having the chat on screen makes me feel very isolated. I feel like nobody else is here. But I got to fix my streaming program next week. All right. If there are more chats, I will grab those. And I think there are. So let me open this tab. Also, I just want to pat myself in the back here and say that today there is a new release in one of my favorite game franchises of all time, Ratchet & Clank. New PS5 game out, and I have not played it yet. Instead, I am too dedicated to to educating you people that I decided to not play it till tonight. So that is some willpower on my part for sure. But right after the stream, probably jumping on. All right, let me read some chats here. Where did I leave off? Pierre Proudhon says, when talking about transgender issues, you need to point out how trans people's brains are different than that of other people. I didn't know that until I watched a 6-year-old secular talk video. I don't know what you're talking about or what this means. Erica Kristen says, you really ought to read the book, A Libertarian Walks into a Bear. I live in New Hampshire. The free staters are so ridiculous. Libertarians are selfish a-holes who don't understand how economies work. Yeah, you know, the best example of that is watch any debate with Sam Cedar and a libertarian. They fall apart rather quickly. So I really, after the stream, if you want to you know, be entertained further, go check out or go look up Majority Reporter, Sam Cedar, and Libertarian, and watch some of those debates. Mateus N says, should Cortez's grandmother have accepted Matt Walsh's GoFundMe money? I don't know anything about this story. Ocasio-Cortez's grandmother accepted Matt Walsh's GoFundMe money? Okay. I don't know. This seems like a non-story. This has no bearing on public policy, so I don't really care. Let me do a refresh here. Radzoso says AOC, Jamal Bowman, and Rashid Tlaib voted present, allowing the Capitol Police funding bill to pass the House. What's your take? Yeah, I saw something about that. I honestly didn't read much into it, so I didn't read enough to have an opinion. I don't know. It's from on the face of it, it sounds like they voted incorrectly, but I didn't read enough into it to really form an opinion. The issue having, you know, the issue with being one person that does all of this, no one works for me, and I try to cover Canadian politics and American and occasionally world politics. There are stories that I'm going to miss, and so that story, the Matt Walsh, Cortez's grandmother story, I have no idea. So certain things I miss, unfortunately. I heard one more chat come in. As my nose is getting itchy, I think getting some allergies here. Karen Goes to Washington says, great channel, great analysis. Thank you, David. Thank you, Karen. Thank you so much. And I believe that's Marjorie Taylor Greene in your thumbnail or in your profile photo with Karen Goes to Washington. Fantastic. All right. Should we end it there? Because I got a video game and a child I need to attend to. So thank you all for showing up. I wish I could grab more chats. You know what? Any normie chats here? Let me see, because I am enjoying myself. Grab some more chats before I go. Someone says libertarians are dumb. At the same time, I don't want to. It's important to be able to speak to people in a way that you can bring them over. At the same time, I don't think any libertarians are watching this stream. But if you talk to one, try to be understanding and listen and just kindly refute their points and, plant seeds is kind of how I want to go about it. Or kind of how I would go about it if you're talking to a libertarian. But you can understand how some people can get sucked into that. I mean, especially, teenagers can get sucked into being a libertarian because that becomes more appealing when you don't have to worry about anybody else but yourself. But clearly it's a ridiculous ideology when you question pretty much any part of it. All right. What else here? Let me grab one more chat. Normie chat. Oh, super chat came in, so maybe I'll just grab that. Del Ortiz says, love your show. You're awesome. Saludos from South Texas. Thank you. Thank you, Del. All right. I think I'm about done now. All right. As usual, I may or may not be. Oh, wait. There's one more chat. I was going to say I may or may not be on Twitch this weekend. I feel like Sundays maybe is a bad time for me, as I've missed quite a bit. I'm still only like 20 minutes into Resident Evil. But at some point, I'm going to have to find a regular time to do Twitch, be it Sundays or another day. At some point, I'll figure that out. But best thing to know, or the best way to be aware when I go on Twitch, is to simply follow me on there, and then you'll be notified. Mr. Sir says that Matt Walsh / AOC GoFundMe story has to do with the U.S. Puerto Rico neglecting and refusal of statehood / independence. AOC's grandmother was hurt by it. Okay. I don't know anything about it. I mean, if Matt Walsh wants to raise money for AOC's grandmother, okay. I'm gonna see. I don't see why she should refuse the money. Why not? You need help? Take it. All right. I mean, I guess there's an attempt there to claim that conservative media does more for Puerto Rico than AOC does, but obviously, if you understand the power of a single congresswoman, she doesn't have full authority to pass legislation, then kind of ridiculous. So yeah, why not take the money? Who cares? All right. That's it. Thank you all for showing up, and maybe on Twitch this weekend. If not, then see you some other time. All right. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.